quick follow-up. Have you ever had trouble buying tickets?
I want to know what the mystery is about getting good tickets. There are certain events that are coming up. I will be that person as well that's there at midday or whatever and get the ticket. And yet when you go to the event, you think, I'm so far back, I'm way in the distance, and yet I bought my ticket at 12:01. How is it that what is the trick, what is the knack to getting the good seats? That I don't know.
Ian McGann is joining us. Ian's a pioneer of, both commercial radio and concert promotion in New Zealand, and Ian's chairman of the New Zealand Entertainment Operators Association. Ian, hello.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Look, very well. Graham East, a listener, before you tell us what you think happens with ticket reselling, Graham East says, why cannot it not simply be made illegal to offer tickets for sale at more than face value? There'd be no problem with anyone disposing of surplus tickets ever again. He's got a point. This would solve everything if you could do that, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. I and members of my industry are saying exactly the same thing. We're having our property, the tickets that we own, being sold for us by a licensed selling agent who are in turn reselling tickets, taking them out of stock and reselling those tickets at a higher price. We all say it's a scam, and we want it to be made illegal, of course.
The difficulty, seeing as we've got two lawyers on the show, of making that illegal, it's obviously a free market. There's nothing illegal about doing it. Could you actually make it so that you couldn't make a profit on tickets? I mean,
I don't know enough about the law either, Jim. All I know is that we are protesting loudly against the Ticketmaster resale, the new site that's opened, and about their methodology in selling tickets at a much higher price. We do not give them permission to sell our tickets in that way, and we say they must not. But we're having thrown back at us that the fact that the New Zealand law as it exists at the moment does not offer protection in that regard. It doesn't stop people, brokers, or anyone for that matter, going and buying a load of tickets and then reselling them at a higher price.
All right, Ian, thank you. That's plainly put. Because other businesses tell you what something costs and then you pay the price, don't they? But of course you would need to pass a law because reselling tickets for a profit is not illegal. I wonder if that will ever come in. I can see you're both engrossed in the prospect. A quick thing to ask you before we go. A woman in the UK in a store sees a £20 note on the floor. She picks it up and keeps it. The £20 belongs to a previous customer. That customer comes back to get it. They check the CCTV. There's Nicole Bailey picking it up and pocketing the money.
So, in New Zealand, if you did that, you would also be convicted. The reason is because you can be convicted of theft or stealing under Section 219 of the Crimes Act 1961 if you dishonestly and without claim of right take property with intent to deprive the owner permanently of that property.
But it'll be different if it was on the footpath outside. That's the intriguing aspect, isn't it?
Well, no, not necessarily. There's a lot of law here, and I'm happy to give it, but I think the music says no.
Yes, the music says no.
Or possession's 9/10 of the law, keep 45 of the $50.
Pick it up, but run.
James Elliott, thank you. Mei Chen, thank you very much, both of you, on the panel today. Thanks, everybody. We're back tomorrow, and Checkpoint coming up with John Campbell.
Kia ora everyone. Tonight on Checkpoint, tributes flow for former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton, who died at Auckland Hospital surrounded by her family earlier today. 6 helicopters are fighting 6 separate scrub fires near Hamner Springs. We're live in Calverton. That road is closed. We'll have the latest. Jacinda Ardern gets the backing of Labour leader Andrew Little to become his new deputy to replace Annette King. I will speak to both Ardern and Little. Donald Trump gives his first address to Congress since taking office. We go live to Washington. Cromwell's housing crisis. The Ombudsman on the use of restraints in prison, and the family of 19 in Ngārawa Wahia who have pitched in to buy a house together.
RNZ News at 5 o'clock. Good afternoon. I'm Anna Thomas. 8 helicopters have now joined dozens of firefighters battling a large scrub fire near Hanmer Springs, which has closed a big section of the alternate road to Christchurch. Fire Service Shift Commander Andrew Norris says the fire is not contained, but they are making greater progress than before. There are 12 ground crews involved, about 40 firefighters and 8 choppers. Heavy machinery is also being used. Andrew Norris says he's not sure of the fire's size, but it is 5 kilometres west of the Hanmer Springs turnoff and is on both sides of State Highway 7. He says State Highway 7 will be closed for at least the next 2 hours. The blaze is a few hundred metres away from Hamish McRae's home on the Lockhill Station farmstead. He says things were a bit hairy for a while.
They'd put a bit of monsoon bucket over the house a few times, but I think they've got it under control as far as getting towards the house. Yeah, got into about 20 hectares of pine trees and a reasonable northwest breeze behind it, so it was going fairly well to start with, but they managed to keep it off the main hill. If it got up there, she'd be going for a few days probably. Couldn't see much, it was just a massive ball of smoke.
Hamish McRae. The police are warning people to avoid travelling in the wider region if at all possible. The Corrections Department has revealed a staff member has been sacked for assaulting a severely at-risk inmate while he was tied down to a bed. A hard-hitting report by the Chief Ombudsman released today details 5 cases it says prisoners were subject to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. In one case, a prisoner at risk of injuring himself was tied down for 16 hours at a time for 37 nights in a row at Auckland Prison last year. Corrections Chief Executive Ray Smith says action has been taken against one staff member involved.
She assaulted a prisoner while he was restrained, and clearly that's unacceptable no matter what the circumstances that led to that. So she lost her job and that matter's been referred to the police.
And Ray Smith says his staff were trying to keep the man alive and safe, but mistakes were made. The family of former Silver Fern netball player Tanya Dalton was with her this morning when she died at Auckland Hospital after her life support was turned off yesterday. 5 days ago, Tanya Dalton collapsed after suffering a ruptured aneurysm while playing touch rugby. A family friend and business partner, Chris Henderson, says Ms Dalton's most important job was as a mum, and that will live on in the 3 kids her and her husband Dwayne raised.
Tarns has put up the fight of her life, but ultimately it wasn't a fight she could win. And so Dwayne, Taylor, Charlie and Matt and her many, many friends and extended family have reluctantly had to say goodbye. It's unbearably sad, but we are comforted by how big a life she lived in her short 45 years.
Chris Henderson. A memorial service will take place at North Harbour on Monday. The Labour MP Jacinda Ardern says while she's never actively sought the deputy leadership, she would be happy to do the job. Annette King will stand aside as deputy and retire as an MP at the September election after a political career spanning more than 30 years. She says she's made the decision herself with no pressure from the party leader Andrew Little or the caucus. Mr Little will nominate Ms Ardern, who won the Mount Albert by-election at the weekend, when the caucus meets to elect the new deputy on Tuesday. Ms Ardern says she will happily accept the role if she gets the caucus vote.
I've always said it's not a job I would ask for, but if I was asked and if the party and my team thought I was well placed to do the job, then I would happily take on the role.
Jacinda Ardern. President Donald Trump has told the United States Congress that the US must move immediately to stem the flow of immigrants to the country. In his first appearance before the combined Congress, Mr Trump used his State of the Nation speech to outline a major change in immigration policy. He said the current policy strains the country's resources as immigrants do not have to prove they can support themselves.
Switching away from this current system of lower-skilled immigration and instead adopting a merit-based system, we will have so many more benefits. It will save countless dollars, raise workers' wages, and help struggling families, including immigrant families, enter the middle class, and they will do it quickly.
Donald Trump told Congress a new immigration policy will help to restart economic growth. It's 5:04. South Africa are 173 for 6 with 10 overs to go, batting first in the 4th one-day cricket international against New Zealand in Hamilton. New Zealand must win today's game to keep the series alive. New Zealand rugby boss Steve Tew has backed comments by former All Blacks Sir John Campbell and All Blacks captain Karen Reid that former players Dan Carter and Ali Williams have tarnished the All Blacks image. Carter has admitted drink driving in Paris, while Williams was arrested for trying to buy cocaine in Paris. The pair both play at the French club Racing. Tew says the incidents are disappointing from several aspects.
This doesn't help anyone, does it? We expect very high standards of our players and our people when they're here with us, and there's a certain legacy that you leave behind in the jersey, and there's a certain responsibility you take away with it. John Campbell and Karen Reid, they have worn and do wear the jersey and sweat and bleed in it.
Steve Tew. The Brisbane Broncos coach Wayne Bennett has dismissed speculations linking Warriors playmaker Kieran Foran to National Rugby Club for next season. Foran is yet to play a match for the Warriors, having arrived after a series of off-field problems while playing in Australia. Reports suggested that Foran saw Bennett as the ideal coach to get his career back on track, but Bennett says no one has spoken to Foran or his manager. Now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. Northland fine with isolated showers. We've got Auckland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country. Fine spells and scattered showers today with possible thunderstorms south of Manukau Harbour. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay fine with isolated showers this evening. Taranaki and Wellington also Wairarapa mainly fine. Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and Westland mainly fine with some cloud this evening. Canterbury low cloud with isolated drizzle tonight. For Otago, Southland and Fiordland areas of cloud. A few showers about Fiordland and coastal Southland, and for the Chatham Islands fine spells. It's 6 minutes past 5.
On behalf of the Dalton family, it is with overwhelming sadness that I'm here to share the news that our beloved T passed away today at 10:20 a.m. with the family by her side. Since Thursday evening, when she experienced a ruptured internal aneurysm on the touch field, Tarns has put up the fight of her life. But ultimately, it wasn't a fight she could win. And so Dwayne, Taylor, Charlie and Matt and her many, many friends and extended family have reluctantly had to say goodbye. It's unbearably sad, but we are comforted by how big a life she lived in her short 45 years. She lived as we might all strive to, never on the sideline, always in the action, bringing her A-game as standard. With a big heart and an easy smile, sucking the juice out of every day. She represented her country for 11 years as a Silver Fern, helped to grow a successful business, and gave of herself and her time generously. Her most important job, though, was as a mum, and she lives on in the 3 cool kids that she and Dwayne have raised. Dwayne was quoted on the weekend as saying, "We couldn't be prouder of her or love her more, and that's how we all feel."
Chris Henderson, family friend and also business partner of Tanya Dalton and her husband Dwayne, speaking shortly after 1 o'clock this afternoon, announcing the death of the former Silver Fern. We'll talk more about Tanya Dalton in a few minutes when we speak to her former coach and her friend, Yvonne Willering. You're with Checkpoint. Thank you for being with us. It's 8 minutes past 5. Also ahead on the program tonight, Andrew Little and Jacinda Ardern, Donald Trump addressing Congress as president, and the Ombudsman's report into the management of prisoners at risk of suicide and self-harm. But let's head to South Canterbury now, where helicopters are fighting a large scrub fire which has closed State Highway 7 between Springs Junction and Culverden. Now remember, after that November earthquake and the loss of State Highway 1 along the east coast on either side of Kaikoura, that is the alternate route between Picton and Christchurch. The fire started on the Waio River side of the road, close to the Hamner Springs turnoff, but soon jumped to the other side of the road and began to spread. The Lewis Pass Road was closed this afternoon as the fire spread near that highway. Joining us now from the cordon closest to Culverden is our reporter, Maya Burry. Maya, this is changing fast. What is happening there?
That's right, John. I'm at a cordon just past Culverden, and if you're watching, you'll be able to see behind me that there's a number of trucks and cars lined up. At the moment, we're being told restricted access only is being given to residents who live beyond this cordon as far as Hamner Springs, but strictly no access for any other motorists, including us. So at this cordon, there's been the police slowly letting some residents through, but further behind us in Culverden, a whole lot of cars lined up and a bit of uncertainty about whether they'll be allowed to pass through this road.
Okay, and that is the road between Picton and Christchurch now. Maya, we can see it looks very dry and very blue, a hint of wind as you're talking to us. Can you see the fire? How near is it to you there?
You can't see the blaze from where I'm standing. It's just tucked up behind a hill near here. But that's right, it's incredibly dry here. North Canterbury has been affected by drought-like conditions for the last 3 years. And so that makes things incredibly, I guess, vulnerable and susceptible to, a blaze that just picks up and can move very, very quickly. As we saw with the Port Hills fires in Christchurch, only a few weeks ago, these things can move very fast. But it does sound, speaking to the shift Area Commander Andrew Norris, he said it does seem like the fire is not yet under control, but that things are looking a lot better than earlier before, he said. And as you might have heard in the news bulletin, a huge effort going into bringing this blaze under control. 8 helicopters, 40 firefighters, and also heavy machinery, including bulldozers. So I think they're hoping to crack down on this pretty fast.
Good news, Maya, but there are road closures. Can you tell us what they stand at the moment?
Yeah, that's right. There are road closures. So State Highway 7 is currently closed between Springs Junction and Culverden, and cordons are in place on Rotherham Road South, Flintoff Mouse Point Road, the intersection at the Hamner Springs turnoff, Leslie Street and Rice Road intersection, and Waio. And so those are the current cordons that are in place, and at the moment that's the latest information we have.
Thanks so much, Maya. Really appreciate it. We will go back to the fire in North Canterbury the moment we can update you on what is going on there. We move now to the announcement that Labour's Deputy Leader Annette King is to retire at the next election. First elected in 1984, she and Trevor Mallard are the only Labour MPs remaining in Parliament from the class of 84, although Peter Dunn was elected with them then too. As MP for the Wellington electorate of Rongotai, she's remained a popular and respected figure in both caucus and the wider party throughout Labour's time in government and opposition, working closely with many of the 8 Labour leaders she has worked under. But over the weekend, as Jacinda Ardern's comprehensive victory in the Mount Albert by-election led to increasing talk about her value to the party, speculation began to rise about Labour's deputy leadership. Don't expect any change, Andrew Little said. Annette King herself dismissed the idea that the Auckland MP could offer something she wasn't already offering. And Jacinda Ardern said, well, I'm not offering it. All that changed this morning with Annette King announcing she would go and she was backing Jacinda Ardern to replace her. Andrew Little then announced he would nominate Jacinda Ardern to be deputy leader and he would back her in the caucus vote next week. Just after that announcement, I spoke to them both asking Andrew Little why.
Because Jacinda, I've obviously known Jacinda for a while. She's been in Parliament since 2008. She is a fantastic network organiser and proven herself campaigning, in what was a very difficult, if a very odd, by-election campaign in Mount Albert. She proved that she can get that vote out. But the truth is, Jacinda connects with a part of the electorate that, we've worked pretty hard to connect with for a long time, and she represents a generation who are the ones who are missing out from a government that has neglected the challenges that go with housing, that go with jobs, that go with education. And, she speaks to that generation, and that's important for us.
Sorry, Jacinda Ardern, it's rude to have you here when we're talking about you rather than to
you.
you.
It's not all awkward, John, don't worry.
Sorry, no, that is slightly odd. You say she connects with part of the electorate, Andrew Little. That would be Auckland, wouldn't it? Because in you, Annette King and Grant Robertson, you had 1, 2, 3 in Wellington, right? And that is not a good look for a party that needs to win Auckland in order to become government.
Auckland is vital, but yeah, connecting with Auckland, connecting with as I say, a generation who around New Zealand, because it's not the housing crisis isn't just Auckland. It's Hamilton, it's Tauranga. I was down at Gisborne, and they might expect to pay lower prices for a house in Gisborne, but actually for there, when they've got massive hikes in their prices, they are feeling that the chronic housing crisis now is reaching them, and it is young people who are missing out. Those people early in their careers who now see, even after working hard and saving hard, they may face the prospect of never owning their own home. And so we want to speak clearly to that generation, because we can fix this. We need a political will to do so, and this general election is about whether we're prepared to make that choice to provide the fixes to give every New Zealander a chance to get ahead.
Jacinda Ardern, why do you want this? Because you have resolutely, singularly and unequivocally not wanted it prior to today.
Yeah, as I've always said, my ambition is for Labor to be in government. When we're in government, that means that we have the ability to make the changes that we've spent time developing, the ideas we want to implement, to address things like the housing crisis and a personal issue for me that I've always advocated for, child wellbeing, child poverty. So I've always said if the team has needed me to do a particular role, then I will do that role. And Andrew has asked me to take on this job, and if the team backs me on Tuesday, then that is what I'll do. For me, it's all about us being in a position to be constructive, to make the change New Zealand needs.
When did this happen? Because in the last 48 hours, you have absolutely unequivocally said, no, it's not me and it's not happening. When did it happen and how did it happen?
Yeah, I haven't sought it. I've always been open. I haven't asked. And I until this time, that hasn't been an opportunity that's been presented to me. But I've been asked. And now, for me, it's all about what do we need to do to make sure we can change the government? And not just for change's sake, but so that we can fix the housing crisis, so we can eradicate child poverty, so we can make progress on the issues we need. And so putting all of the personal aside and just saying what's needed, and if the team wants me, that's what I'll do.
Andrew Little, what conversations did you have with Annette King? In other words, was the writing put on the wall, or was the writing on the wall and someone just pointed her at the wall? I mean, what took place? Clearly Annette King has stepped down, and clearly she has done this for her own reasons. But did someone say to her, hey, we're terribly sorry, but now is the time?
What I can say of Annette is, she is very much in charge of her own destiny. She made this decision, and she told me yesterday.
Absolutely, absolutely, and that's a good response, but it's a somewhat semantic response. She made her own decision after what? What conversations preceded that decision?
Well, I mean, there's two things. I mean, of course, I'm having conversations with Annette multiple times a day, every day, because that's the nature of a leader, deputy leader.
Right.
No, let me finish, because I know you're trying to look for, and you're not the first journalist to look for some sort of crack to say this has all been set up long ago.
I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that.
Because
but I just wonder.
I know, and you won't be alone in that wondering. But can I just say this, is that Annette came to this decision herself, and she told me about her decision yesterday about not just stepping out of the deputy role, but retiring and stepping out of all kind of roles pending the election.
And you tried to persuade her to stay on the front bench?
Because she's fantastic on that. She's fantastic in health. And, she did take time to think about that. And she came to me last night and said, no, I've made a decision. I'm ready to call it quits. And I
accept all of that. I accept all of that. But I want to know what conversations that decision followed.
Well, I don't know all of the conversations Annette has had.
With you, the conversations with you?
No, well, all that matters, what matters is that Annette, because she is a strong-willed woman, which is why I enjoyed having her as my deputy.
And our loyalty to her as friends and colleagues is to respect that she made this decision. She called me yesterday and she told me this is what she wanted to do and that she supported me to take on the role from her. I felt humbled by that. I felt saddened as well at the same time. And I think that's probably how we all feel, because she is such an amazing support network for all of us. She's been a stellar Member of Parliament. And I think probably it does us a disservice if we continue to pull through the machinations of the decision she has made.
So I found it very difficult when she was told me her decision.
But did you find it difficult on a personal level, but there must have been some part of you that thought, right, this is renewal, it's rejuvenation, it's Auckland in my top two, and it's a woman who has just comfortably won a by-election, albeit one that National didn't stand in. And there must have been some part of you that thought, this is good.
All of those things. I mean, in the end, as a party leader, you look for opportunities all the time, and the opportunity arose. I've got to think about the future, and obviously as a political party facing a general election, I've got to think about how we perform best in a general election. And a set of circumstances has arisen in the last day or so that has allowed me to make a set of judgments and calls that's led to me nominating Jacinda for deputy.
You said you've got to think about the future. What about any other reshuffles? Are you going to look at your front bench, and in fact your second bench, and make some changes there? Is now the time to do it while these discussions are taking place?
Well, there's no scope for wholesale change. With the change in deputy after the caucus decision next week, there's also Raymond Ho coming back in, so there'll have to be a bit of jiggling around over portfolio responsibilities. There'll be nothing wholesale, nothing big, but it'll be setting us up for the best possible team we can get to lead us into September.
And in the best possible team that Labor can get to lead you into the election in September, you will be number 2, almost inevitably, because with the leaders backing, it does seem like a fait accompli right next week at caucus. What will you bring to it, Jacinda Ardern? Let's end on that question. What will you bring to it, do you think?
My strength and utter determination. You know, as I've said, the fact that I'm now in this position has been because my team has decided via Andrew to consider me for the job. And as I approach every job in politics, I'll put everything I have into seeing our team over the line.
Jacinda Ardern and Andrew Little speaking to me this morning, shortly after that announcement. It's coming up to 21 minutes past 5. You're with Checkpoint. Coming up on the program, we can have more tone on the phone. We can also hear about Cromwell's housing crisis. South Auckland locals are angry that free water safety programs are being offered at 2 pools, but only to children of Indian ethnicity. That damning, stinging report from the Ombudsman on the use of restraints in prisons and much more. All of that, in fact, before 6:30. It's a very busy program tonight. You can text us on 2101. You can tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Facebook, we are, of course, live, streaming on Facebook, and our email is checkpoint@radionz.co.nz. Lots of people pointing out that those fires are, of course, in North Canterbury, not South Canterbury. As I said, what I meant is let's go south to Canterbury, and I completely buggered that up. I apologise. Of course, we know it is north of Christchurch. Right. The time is coming up to 22 minutes past 5. A family has lost a very special person. Mum, wife, daughter, friends have lost someone they dearly loved, but the death of Tanya Dalton is a more public loss too. The sporting community and all who follow sport in this country are mourning the loss of the Silver Fern, who died this morning from a brain aneurysm after collapsing last week while playing touch rugby. The 45-year-old mother of 3 played for the Silver Ferns in an international career which spanned 11 years between 1996 and 2007. Yvonne Willering was Tanya Dalton's coach for 5 of those years. A short time ago, because she wanted us to know how great Tanya was, she shared her memories of her.
Look, honestly, she's going to be so greatly missed, and not just by the netball community, and we've heard a lot from the netball community, but really about all those who are fortunate enough to have met her. And I was one of the lucky ones. I knew Tanya, obviously, as a player, and I've coached her, but also as a person, and actually over time, and even though there's an age difference between us, we actually grew to be quite good friends, and I tell you, I even on occasions took advice from her. So, there were a lot of aspects to Towns in her life, in her short life, really, but she certainly achieved a lot of things.
Gosh, people loved her, didn't they?
Absolutely, because she's such a positive person and a caring person, And one of the things that she always had difficulty doing is saying no to people. And for some reason, she always managed to find time to help people out, And it wasn't just on the netball court either.
You coached her when you were Silver Ferns coach, which was the beginning of her Silver Ferns career, but you also coached against her. You were Northern Force coach, and she was with that remarkable Southern Sting team, and she was absolutely formidable as an opponent, wasn't she?
Yeah, really annoying, actually. It's really interesting. Like here, Tanya moves down to the Southern Sting, and you could never actually say anything against her loyalty with Harbour. Everyone says, oh, yeah, but she's still a Harbour girl. And I'm going, yeah, but she's playing for Sting. But it's true, she still would be considered to be a Harbour girl, and so did she. It was for her netball reasons that she went, but really difficult to play against. Always obviously wanted her in the right team, but really accurate shooter. And everyone used to say, but the majority of her shots were very close distance. Yeah, but she had this unbelievable ability to get free within a very short space, and it's also just her caring for her teammates, both on and off the court, that everyone knows, and she just so positive in everything, and there was never a dull moment when you were around Tanya.
Yes, I have the sense of a profound generosity, because with the Ferns, she played with the Ferns over a long period of time, but not as much court time, I'm sure, as she would have loved. And yet she was tremendously generous, wasn't she, to her teammates?
Absolutely. She's a player that obviously wanted to get out on court. And, you had the RNZ Van Dijks around at that time, and even Donna Wilkins was around at that time. So, yeah, that was difficult, but very supportive, of her teammates. And that's what I loved about her, the fact that she was very much a team member and cared for the circumstances around her. But if she was given the opportunity out on court, she certainly seized the moment. And so you knew that, when she went out on court, she was always going to give it the 100% and was always striving for improvement. Even if she was dropped from the Silver Fern, she will come back stronger. She would look to see what area she could improve on, and just stuck to the task at hand. So, just very caring, and just some great attributes, really. She's a wonderful person.
Yeah, someone to admire as a player, to have as a friend if you were, lucky enough to know her, and to look up to. There is a whole generation of kids who have looked up to her, right?
Absolutely, she even, and I had the situation where she coached an under 15 team and did really well with them. And again, it's because she feels for what's happening out on court, and she has a very, very positive manner, and she knows when people are trying. So, sometimes it isn't just about results. But an example of that is that when she was a commentator, sometimes we talk and I'd say to her, look, you just got to be honest out there, and she says, yeah, but it's really difficult because she didn't want to hurt people, but on the other hand, it was really important for her to state it as it was. But Good Old Towns was always able to do it in such a way that it was going to be in a positive manner, and it certainly was never destructive to any particular player.
Yvonne Willering, that wasn't easy for her to do, but she really wanted us all to know how wonderful Tanya Dalton was. It's 26.5 minutes past 5. Some breaking news. 2 people have been killed in a crash in Northland. It's on State Highway 1 near Huke-Renui, which is roughly, I'm looking at the map here, roughly halfway between Whangarei and the far north communities of Pahia, Russell, etc. So it's pretty remote, although it is on State Highway 1. A diversion is in place at Korpeti Road. The crash occurred around 4:45 and is believed to involve a car and a truck. 2 people have been confirmed killed in it. More information will be released as it becomes available. That from the police about that crash in Northland. The time on Checkpoint now is 27 minutes past 5. A woman who was showered with petrol from a spilt pump at a Z Energy petrol station was offered, from a split pump at a Z Energy petrol station, was offered a coffee and a muffin and sent home with no warning of the danger she was in. Z Energy has opened an investigation into what happened and why staff at the station in Kapiti didn't immediately call the fire service. Jacob McSweeney filed this report.
Retired Kapiti resident Ingrid Carson wanted to mow her lawns yesterday, so she made her way to her local Z Energy petrol station on Kapiti Road to fill up the lawnmower's jerry can.
Went up to the machine, pushed in $10, picked up the 91 Bowser, bent over to put the nozzle into the jerry can to fill it up, and as soon as I pulled the trigger, petrol just showered me all over my hair, all down my back. I was soaked, and I just dropped the Bowser handle and ran.
When she looked back, she saw that where the hose connected to the pump had split open and petrol was spraying out in all directions. After Ingrid rushed inside to get some help, Z Energy staff organised to move her car out of the way and to shut off the faulty pump. She was offered a coffee and a muffin for her trouble.
It's all through my hair, it's everywhere, it's all over me. And he got some serviettes out of the muffin thing, wiped my back. I could feel it all through my hair. I said to the guy, the hose, I said it's split or something. One of them just said, oh, the customer before you did something with the hose, and I was going to go over and look and see what had happened, but I got busy with a queue of customers.
Ingrid managed to get a piece of plastic to cover her car seat and was charged $10 to have her jerry can filled. The cashier joked it was lucky she didn't have to pay for the spilled petrol. Back at home, her neighbour, a volunteer fireman, told her to get straight into the shower while the fire service was called to come and decontaminate her. She says she was in shock and she didn't realise the danger she was in. Mrs Carson says Z Energy should have done more to ensure her safety.
I don't think I realised quite the implications until I'd come home and had the AMBOs and the fire guys with me, and I think, oh, okay, this is pretty serious shit that's happening here now. And yet those guys just have a nice day. He'd given me the muffin, given me the coffee, they'd filled my jerry can, I'd paid for it, they'd put the plastic, and they said, and three of them said, have a nice day. It was like, you've been processed.
Her clothes, including a skirt that was a Christmas present from her husband and expensive footwear, were ruined. John Carson, Ingrid's son, was furious at the risk his mum's life was put in.
How the hell does this even happen, and what the hell if she could have been a fireball? Petrol's combustible, has a very low flash point. It's a chemical, it shouldn't be on you. And, just to be sent home in a car, you're probably still reeking. I hope you had all your doors and windows, or your windows open, otherwise you could have fumed yourself.
They called Z Energy, but after a couple of hours waiting to get a call back, John Carson didn't think the company was moving quick enough and posted what happened on Facebook. Z Energy's spokesperson, Jonathan Hill, admitted the company dropped the ball. He says there'll be an investigation into what exactly went wrong.
It's an accident that should never have happened. We are very, very sorry that this has happened and have apologised to the customer for it. As soon as we know the outcome of what exactly went wrong, we will make sure that we learn from it and that it doesn't happen again. It is a very, very rare incident.
The manager of the Kapiti Road Z Energy has now visited Ingrid Carson to apologise. And now she's been given flowers, a fuel voucher and compensation for the stress and loss of clothing. For Checkpoint, Core Jacob McSweeney, Tēnei.
Coming up on Checkpoint with the time at 29 to 6, US President Donald Trump has made his first speech to Congress as president. We'll go live to Washington. Cromwell's housing crisis and the family of 19 in Ngārawa Wahia who have pulled their finances to buy a house together, and this extraordinary report from the Ombudsman. All of that before 6. But before any of it, Anna Thomas with the headlines.
Thanks, John. 8 helicopters, about 45 firefighters and heavy machinery are battling a large fire near Hanmer Springs, which has closed a big section of the alternative road to Christchurch. The fire service shift commander Andrew Norris says the fire is not contained, but they're making greater progress than before. The fire is about 5 kilometres west of the Hanmer Springs turnoff and is burning in plantations on both sides of the road. The highway is closed between Culverden and Springs Junction. The Labour MP Jacinda Ardern says while she's never actively sought the deputy leadership, she would be happy to do the job. Annette King will stand aside as deputy and retire as an MP at the September election after a political career spanning more than 30 years. The party leader Andrew Little will nominate Ms Ardern, who won the Mount Albert by-election at the weekend, when the caucus meets to elect the new deputy on Tuesday. The Corrections Department has revealed a staff member has been sacked for assaulting a severely at-risk inmate while he was tied down to a bed. A hard-hitting report by the Chief Ombudsman released today details 5 cases it says prisoners were subject to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. The netball fraternity is mourning the loss of former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton, who died this morning after collapsing while playing touch rugby last week. Netball New Zealand's Chief Executive Jenny Wiley says the entire netball community is in shock and is deeply saddened. President Donald Trump has opened the door to a broad overhaul of the US immigration system and vowed to pursue massive tax relief for the middle class in a speech to Congress. Mr. Trump's comments on immigration were a shift from his hardline campaign rhetoric. And that's the news.
Thanks, Anna. More on Donald Trump and more on the Ombudsman coming right up. We're going live to Washington next. But first, let's go live to another capital, Wellington. Giles Beckford, our business editor, joins us. And a couple of companies reporting today and evidence, Giles, that fresh is best, I hear.
Well, it's what we do best in this country, isn't it? We turn sunshine into food and then we sell it. And precisely that's come out from Turners and, well, T&G they now call themselves. Older listeners and viewers will know them as Turners and Growers. They're one of our major exporters of fruit, apples and kiwi fruit in particular top their list, but they also do asparagus and tomatoes, and they're even growing grapes in Peru. But the demand for fresh food and from places where it is safe and is up to standard has been helping them. They had a quite solid lift in their profits, and you should remember that fresh food or horticulture in particular earns us $4 billion a year. Although we talk a lot about dairy, that's about a third of what dairy brings in as well. So it's not to be sneezed at. The other company that reported today and did quite well is New Zealand King Salmon. They have farms in the Marlborough Sounds. It's just about to set up some farms in open water, and their export volumes were up 19%. Once again, big popularity and demand for fresh salmon around the world. Once again, it's what we do best, and really we should be asking, why don't we do more of it?
Charles, I haven't caught up with this, but some new numbers reflecting the health or otherwise of the Australian economy from across the Tasman. What do they tell us?
Well, this is the GDP, Gross Domestic Product, the value of their economy, up 1.1% in the last 3 months of last year. Now, remember that the quarter before that, they'd had one of their rare contractions. The economy there had shrunk because of the fall in the commodity prices, but they've bounced back. Their annual rate is still 2.5% compared with New Zealand's 3.5% annual rate. But let's not get too cocky. We want a healthy Australian economy because they buy billions of dollars worth of New Zealand exports, and that's what it's about. If they're doing well, it helps us to do well.
Any move in the dollar off the back of those Australian figures, Charles?
Well, the Australian dollar did go up because the expectation now is that the Reserve Bank of Australia may be closer to raising rates by the end of the year. So that, when you reverse it, of course, the New Zealand dollar was down to about 93.3. The Trump speech, which was big on rhetoric and talk of tax reforms, but scant on detail, and we'll hear how scant quite soon, I suspect. Yes. That meant that the US dollar was just a touch softer. We're sitting at around 71.5 US cents. New Zealand share market, top 50 index, seesawed all day, down 18 points at 71.49. And that's it for now.
Thanks, Giles, our business editor. Yes, let's do the scant check that Giles was talking about. We go to Washington, where US President Donald Trump has made his first speech to Congress following that turbulent first month in office. In his primetime address, Mr Trump stuck to his script very closely, reading much of it off auto cue and doing very little of the ad-libbing that has been his trademark. His themes were as predicted, but his tone was more controlled than he has often been.
Recent threats targeting Jewish community centers and vandalism of Jewish cemeteries, as well as last week's shooting in Kansas City, remind us that while we may be a nation divided on policies, we are a country that stands united in condemning hate and evil in all of its very ugly forms. Each American generation passes the torch of truth, liberty, and justice in an unbroken chain all the way down to the present. That torch is now in our hands, and we will use it to light up the world. I am here tonight to deliver a message of unity and strength, and it is a message deeply delivered from my heart.
Donald Trump, let's go to Washington. Simon Marks, our correspondent, has been watching the speech closely and poring back over it. Hi, Simon. Lovely to have you with us. Boy, someone said to him, you behave yourself, because that was a speech in which great control was being exercised, right?
Without question, and I think most observers are concluding that the someone who said that to him was almost certainly his daughter, Ivanka Trump, who was sitting up in the gods there in the US Capitol building alongside her husband, Jared Kushner, both of them significant influences over Donald Trump. And you could see Ivanka Trump's fingerprints, certainly over the beginning of the speech, where you heard there Donald Trump finally addressing the issue of hate crimes here in the United States, finally speaking out over the killing of an Indian software engineer in Kansas last week, and then at the end of the speech where he particularly spoke about early childhood education, about trying to improve opportunities for women in the United States, and really offered a vision of a United States that he insists can come together and unify after 5.5 turbulent weeks here of his presidency so far. But, you know, the biggest takeaway of this speech, I think, was the fact that he could actually do it. Here he was in this amazing forum, making for the first time ever a speech to both houses of Congress. He was very nervous about it. When he left the White House, the television cameras glimpsed him sitting in the back of the limo in the driveway shortly before it pulled away, and you could see him rehearsing cadences of the script, trying to get comfortable with it. But it wasn't just the words that I suspect he was rehearsing, it was the tonality of it. There was no attack on the media in this speech. There was no mention of Hillary Clinton. He didn't use the word Russia in the speech at all. This was a man who you could almost hear trying to turn a new page in the story of his very young presidency. The question, of course, is where does that story lead?
Yes. It's fascinating, isn't it? I think ABC was running a focus group and a woman was asked, what do you think of this? And she said, that's not Donald Trump. I'll see the real Donald Trump at midnight on Twitter. And is this persuasive? It's a lovely response. Is this persuasive? Because in a way, the Democrats looked a little bit po-faced. If Trump can pull this off, if Trump can make this a reliable and consistent tonality that he can produce way more often than he has, it will work for him, won't it?
Well, let's be clear, John. This is the first and only time he's produced this tonality. I think we need to see it being produced at least one more time before we can call it a streak. I mean, there's no question that it's going to be challenging for him, a man who has not shown a great degree of discipline in the presidency or outside it, to continue wandering down this particular avenue. But you're absolutely right. I mean, there was a split screen. It wasn't a split screen, but it was effectively a split screen that Americans were offered tonight. Republicans on one side of the room getting up and cheering everything he said. Democrats looking increasingly glum as they sat on their hands, and looking, I think, increasingly glum because they realised that this was far and away the most presidential performance that he had ever given, and a crucial performance given that it was being transmitted into living rooms across the country. Now, he still didn't have answers to some of the enormous problems he faces. There was a big cheer from Republicans when he said he wants to repeal and replace Obamacare, but the Democrats know the Republicans have no idea how they're actually going to do that without causing enormous hardship for millions of Americans. Two other areas where he made news tonight. First of all, immigration. He opened the door to what he described as a complete shift in America's immigration system, talking about the possibility of a merit-based system modelled on the Australian model. That would be a radical move away from the history of immigration over the last 30 or 40 years here, and it's something that he reached out across the aisle, encouraging Democrats to get behind. But the most effective moment of this speech was when he paid tribute to the widow of a slain American serviceman who died on that raid in Yemen shortly after President Trump became president and commander-in-chief. She won a sustained ovation, and that was politically a masterstroke by Donald Trump, who for days has been criticised for not having been sufficiently empathetic over the loss of that serviceman or towards his family.
Thank you, Simon. Really appreciate that analysis. Simon Marks on Donald Trump. As Simon said, easily his strongest speech as US president. Arguably a low bar, but it was the fillip the Republicans needed. It will be fascinating to watch to see whether he can maintain that over the days and weeks and months ahead. Simon Marks live from Washington. The time on Checkpoint is coming up to 17 minutes to 6. Thank you for being with us. Let's head to Central Otago now, where the Mayor says he's going to lead the creation of an affordable housing scheme for the town of Cromwell to try to deal with an emerging accommodation crisis there. Average house prices in the town have jumped to $500,000, and there are only 4 properties listed for rent at less than $500 a week. Now, lots of jobs in horticulture around there. They are not high income jobs, and rents at that level will become increasingly unaffordable for people. There are reports of people sleeping in caravans, tents and garages to survive. Here's our Otago Southern reporter, Ian Telfer.
Booming Cromwell has 4,500 people and dozens of jobs on offer, but hardly anything for rent. The coordinator for Central Otago Budgeting Services, Pam Hughes, says the boom may be good for some, but there are now no affordable houses for her clients and it's reached a crisis.
To me, a rental crisis is when you've got no homes for rent.
and you've got people needing homes. You only have to look at the land agents' windows to see how many rental homes they have. A lot of people who are getting homes are they're waiting for the person to move out before somebody moves in, so they're already taken. They're not actually being actively advertised.
Searching online today, RNZ found just 9 properties listed for rent. The cheapest is for $380 a week, and there are only 4 properties for rent below $500. The on-site manager of Canmuir Motor Camp at nearby Bannockburn, Martine McDowell, says they have about 15 people living there who have moved to Cromwell but can't find any other accommodation. She says they're not all low-income people either.
Single parents that have got kids, you've also got situations where both parents are working and they just can't find anything for their families. I've heard of a father and son living in a caravan on someone's property. I've heard of a mother and 3 little kids living in a tent in her parents' backyard. I mean, it's not too far away till winter. Where are these people going to go?
Speaking from the Cromwell Mall, Central Otago's new mayor Tim Cadogan says he's very concerned by what he calls a serious accommodation shortage heading towards a crisis. He says Cromwell's the district's hotspot because of its lifestyle, proximity to Queenstown and the rapid growth of short-term rentals from things like the website Airbnb.
There's just a lot of people coming in here. Everybody is saying, boy, the place is booming. You talk to anybody. But of course, when you have a boom, there's a risk of people getting left behind. How do people get into the housing market? How do the young ones get established here?
Mr Cadogan says affordable housing for Cromwell's one of his top 3 priorities. He had meetings this morning about starting an affordable housing scheme which he would lead as mayor.
For myself, I look up the road to Queenstown, where the Queenstown Community Housing Trust has been in place for 10 years. They've put 100 families into low-cost housing. I think that may be, something like that may be where we've got to look at to see whether it's something that can be extended down the river to here.
The General Manager of Cromwell's The Gate and Harvest Hotel, Glenn Christensen, says he'll back the mayor 100%.
I don't think anyone in Cromwell would deny that this needs to happen and that we're on the border, so it needs to be looked into now. We might survive another year of tight rents. We might get through next summer, but if we continue the way we are, then that's the end of it, I'd say. It'd be too tight from there.
It also emerged today Housing New Zealand has 2 vacant homes in Cromwell which haven't been used for 3 and 8 months. The Crown Agency says demand for state housing is low in the town, and if that continues, the properties may be sold. In Dunedin, for Checkpoint, ko Ian Telfer tēnei.
Coming up, that report by the Ombudsman. We're going to stay on the subject of housing for a little bit longer. It's not just in Cromwell, obviously, that soaring house prices have put the dream of home ownership out of reach of many families. In the North Island, the Turner whānau from Narua Wahia decided the only way they could own their own home was to buy a house together. All 19 of them. Te Manu Kōrehi reporter Shannon Haunui Thompson went to check it out and met the 10 adults and 9 tamariki who now be sharing one very big bathroom.
The newly blessed 9-bedroom whare will become a home to 4 generations of the Turner whānau. 4 years ago, the whānau decided to build one large house instead of multiple ones on a single section. Whānau spokesperson Rangita Moana Wilson says it's the only way she and some of her siblings would ever be able to afford a home.
The overall cost of this build was $720,000. Combined, there'll be 5 whānau who will live in it, including my mother and father, myself and 3 other siblings and their little whānau, and we're just going to share the costs. So collectively we'll be paying off one mortgage instead of renting, which is what the majority of us were doing.
Ms Wilson says sharing the financial burden of a mortgage gives them the space to focus on the future.
Our relationships have become stronger with each other. We're looking at what it looks like, the future looks like for our children. And I suppose we've created an opportunity now where we can build upon all these things that were once issues. We found a solution for these, and we can now start dreaming about what we actually want to do instead of what we have to do.
The house is 500 square metres with the wharekai in the centre. There are 9 bedrooms and 1 big bathroom fitted out with 3 showers, 3 toilets and 3 hand basins. One of the builders, Hemi Weber, says it was a rewarding challenge.
Normally in a situation like this we'd have to have 2 or 3 units on the one section, which you actually just physically can't do with resource consent and everything like this. So with the Papakāinga housing that we've got, with the concept that we've achieved here, it's amazing. It's just awesome. It's awesome for the whānau, it's affordable, and everybody wins.
The first of its kind, the Papakāinga project received $450,000 in government funding. The Māori Development Minister, Tūroro Flavel, says the house will act as a springboard for the Turner family.
I've thought about it in a whānau ora way, thinking about the whānau all coming back to home base. They brought in the economic aspect by going into a venture around selling mussel fritters, looking to export overseas, for goodness sake. So it's capturing everything that we're trying to do in whānau ora, but most importantly, they brought all their kids home to be supportive of the kingitanga, which was always their dream.
As for the Turners themselves, Rangi Tāmoana Wilson says the Papakāinga project has made them stronger as a whānau.
One of the first things we did was that we created a whānau trust, and that became the governing body for ourselves. So any major decisions that need to be made after we've had our discussions within the hui and the wānanga frameworks is that we leave it to the trustees, and we've allowed those whānau members to make the final call. To date, we've all come to pretty much a unanimous agreement about everything that we've been doing, and so that's been pretty good.
The 5 whānau move into their new big whare tomorrow. Mo te hōtaka o te ahi nei, ko Shannon Haunui-Thompson, aho.
10 minutes to 6, an inmate at risk of hurting himself was tied down for 16 hours a day for 37 nights in a row at Auckland Prison last year. It's one of 5 cases where a report by the Chief Ombudsman says at-risk prisoners were subjected to cruel, inhumane and degrading treatment. And it says the Corrections Department has breached the UN Convention Against Torture. Our political reporter Craig McCulloch has more.
In one case at Auckland Prison, an inmate was secured to a tie-down bed by his wrists, torso and ankles for almost 600 hours over 37 days. In some cases, he wasn't released even to go to the toilet. The Chief Ombudsman, Peter Bosher, says that's unacceptable.
I just don't think that the average New Zealander would accept that tying someone down on a bed, unable to move, day after day, week after week, for this length of time each day, is tolerable.
Tie-down beds can only be used as a last resort and in very prescribed circumstances. The report says the restraints appear to have been used excessively because of a lack of resources. But Corrections Chief Executive Ray Smith denies that.
People made mistakes, but they were trying to do the right thing to keep people alive. I think the staff did all the right things initially. I think that plan went on for too long and mistakes were made in the course of it. And, you know, really when you look at it in the cold light of day, you just go, we should have come up with a better option earlier.
Mr Smith says one person has been sacked for assaulting the prisoner while he was restrained.
Clearly that's unacceptable no matter what the circumstances that led to that. So she lost her job and that matter's been referred to the police.
Labour MP Calvin Davis is appalled by the account.
Nothing that I read about corrections surprises me anymore. It's almost like we've got a third world prison system and we're better than this as a country.
And the Greens Corrections spokesperson David Clendon says it's high time for Ray Smith to go.
How many times can corrections be found to have failed so badly in policy and practice? He seems to have presided over a whole series of disasters and failures, and yet his position appears not to have been challenged, and I think it should be.
But Ray Smith says he won't resign.
No, I get up in the morning and come to work and try to make a difference. That's what people expect me to do, and that's what I am doing.
Mr Smith says Corrections has cut down on the number of tie-down beds around the country, and he says the department's developed a comprehensive plan to address the increasing demand for access to mental health services. That includes a $300 million redevelopment of the country's maximum security prison, due to open early next year. The Chief Ombudsman, Peter Bosher, says Corrections can sometimes be slow to acknowledge that what it's done is wrong.
Corrections say that they're going to put in place a wholly new mental health intervention program. If that happens, all of us will be delighted.
Mr Bosher says his office will be closely monitoring Corrections to ensure the changes are made. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Craig McCulloch.
7 minutes to 6, let's change the subject entirely now. An Auckland Council and Sport New Zealand funded organisations being accused of being discriminatory in setting up free water safety programs that are only available to people of Indian ethnicity. The ethnicity restriction has angered locals who say it's unfair, and water safety courses should be available to everyone who can't afford them instead of to specific races or groups. Here's Zach Fleming with more.
Flyers have been dropped at the Massey Park Pool in Papakura and the Otahuhu Leisure Centre,
offering a free water safety program for anyone of Indian ethnicity, plus a free term of swimming lessons once the program is over. Active, which runs the program, is primarily funded by Sports New Zealand and the Auckland Council, but locals contacted Checkpoint today to say the program should be available to all Aucklanders regardless of race.
Let's face it, anyone can drown, so why doesn't all the kids get taught? Why only one race? You know, if it's good enough for one, what are they trying to do? They're trying to segregate people by giving one race exclusive, privileges? Or do they want us all to be one?
Alf Isaacs Bennett takes his 6-year-old daughter to Massey Park Pool once a week.
Auckland City Council wants to put their name on it. I would have thought Auckland City Council would make it available to as many people as possible.
He feels strongly about it because his daughter's cousin drowned in a public pool a decade ago, so Mr. Isaacs Bennett has made paying for swimming lessons a priority. He says he has spent several $100s on them.
I would have thought that they would have said, hey, maybe all attendees of the pool would require this valuable program, so why not all attendees to the Papakura pools be allowed this great offer, this great, service that could save other children's lives.
Active's CEO, Sarah Sandley, says the program is about addressing the Indian community's low participation in sport and recreation.
The fact is that we've got limited resources and they have to be targeted at areas of greatest need. And levels of participation amongst Indian Aucklanders, amongst other targeted groups, are quite a serious issue. So that's the reason why we have called out certain groups which require specific and targeted assistance.
Miss Sandley says Active runs several water safety programs.
We have other partners like Foundation North, who are a cornerstone investor in the Greater Auckland Aquatic Action Plan, a project which coordinates professionally delivered free swim to survive lessons. Since 2001, it's delivered 715,000 lessons to more than 100,000 children in deciles 1 to 6 schools.
Last year, 81 people died in preventable drownings. The largest represented ethnicity was New Zealand Europeans at 40%. Indians form part of the Asian group, which made up just 5%. The water safety program is due to start in around a fortnight. For Checkpoint, Zach Fleming.
Building owners say they may not be able to afford to fix their high-risk buildings, and even if they can, they're unlikely to meet the deadline. The government has released a list of 38 streets around the country with unreinforced masonry on buildings, which must be fixed in the next 12 months. The cost is likely to be somewhere in the region of $9 million. Now, 29 of them are in Wellington CBD, with others in Lower Hutt, Marlborough and Turanui in North Canterbury, of course, after that November earthquake. Edward O'Driscoll reports.
Councils have made a list of the streets where the chances of unreinforced masonry falling off buildings is high. The Wellington City Council Building Resilience Manager, Stephen Cody, says the risk of another earthquake has brought the deadline forward.
Because of the heightened seismic risk as a result of the Kaikoura earthquake in November last year, it's increased the risk of another strong earthquake or aftershock, so therefore it was decided that there would be a need to move the clock forward, so to speak, in regard to having some buildings strengthened.
Stephen Cody says it was broken facades and parapets that killed people in the Christchurch earthquake. The councils have now started to tell affected building owners who have a year to fix their buildings. But the Wellington Inner City Association Chief Executive, Geraldine Murphy, doubts owners will be able to get the work finished on time.
You could be months late because you've got to get all your owners on board. You've got to work through this process. I've been talking to owners, to engineers about getting a detailed seismic assessment, and they're saying, well, yeah, we can respond, but it'll be 2 months before we can start the work.
The government is giving $3 million to help building owners with the cost of repairs. The councils will add an additional $1.5 million, bringing the total to half the overall estimated repair cost of $9 million. It means owners will get a 50% subsidy on repairs after they've been completed, but Geraldine Murphy says some of them won't be able to afford to even get started.
Chances are there's going to be owners there who, they might be business owners, they might have residential people in there as well, but chances are there could be people who just haven't been able to find the money, and that's possibly partly why it hasn't been done.
Ian Harrison is the chair of evidence-based seismic strengthening and says the subsidy won't be enough.
If you're looking at 300 buildings, just to get an engineer on site and everything goes with that, and what they mean by facades, there could be some facades which are extremely expensive to fix. So I think the subsidy should not be capped. It should be, if they want to put up 50%, then it should be 50% of the actual.
Cuba Street in Wellington was identified as being high risk, and people there agreed that dodgy buildings needed to be fixed.
All the facades, like the ancient looking like things on the ends of the building, it would just be a shame if they did fall and they did break.
Public safety is foremost in the whole situation, so yeah, I think it's a good thing.
It would probably be comforting to know that they're as secure as they can be, or there is interim measures put in place to help, keep it stable.
No, I agree, that does need to be addressed.
If building owners don't meet the 12-month deadline, it'll be up to the local councils to work out the next course of action. For Checkpoint, Edward O'Driscoll.
After 6 o'clock, we're going to go back to North Canterbury for the latest on those fires. We actually spoke to some people stuck in the traffic backed up behind one of the cordons, and well, we spoke to one group of Australians here for a wedding. They'll be our guests after 6.
RNZ News at 6 o'clock. Good evening, I'm Anna Thomas. The fire service says no homes are in danger from a large scrub fire near Hanmer Springs, which has closed a big section of the alternative road to Christchurch. 8 helicopters and 12 ground crews of about 40 firefighters are involved in the effort. Fire Service Shift Commander Andrew Norris says there have been no forced evacuations, but some households may have opted to leave as a precaution. The fire is burning in 2 plantation blocks either side of State Highway 7 between Springs Junction and Culverden. State Highway 7 remains closed to through traffic, with more than 30 cars and freight trucks queuing at a cordon near Culverden. Restricted access past the cordon is being granted to residents only. The Transport Agency says the alternative way to Christchurch is via State Highway 73, the Arthurs Pass Otera route, adding another 2 hours to the journey between Picton and Christchurch. The state of local emergency covering Christchurch City and the Selwyn district over the Port Hills fire has just expired. 99% of the fire perimeter is contained and controlled, and everyone who had to evacuate has now been allowed back to their homes. Rural fire crews from Christchurch and Selwyn are still actively working to manage hotspots within the fire zone, which measures more than 1,800 hectares. The Chief Ombudsman has criticised Corrections' response to his hard-hitting investigation into the treatment of at-risk prisoners. His report, released today, details 5 cases it says inmates were subject to cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. In one case, an inmate at risk of injuring himself was tied down for 16 hours at a time for 37 nights in a row at Auckland Prison last year. Corrections Chief Executive Ray Smith accepts mistakes were made, but says his staff were trying to keep the man alive. Chief Ombudsman Peter Boshier says that explanation is not good enough.
I just don't think that the average New Zealander would accept that tying someone down on a bed, unable to move, day after day, week after week, for this length of time each day is tolerable.
Peter Boshier says he will be closely monitoring corrections to ensure changes are made. The former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton has died. She was 45. Dalton collapsed after suffering an aneurysm 5 days ago while playing touch rugby in Auckland. Her life support was turned off yesterday afternoon. Tests showed the aneurysm caused massive blood loss, leading to a loss of oxygen to the brain for an extended period. The family announced this afternoon that Dalton died this morning. President Trump has promised a renewal of American spirit in his first speech to joint sessions of Congress in Washington. Mr. Trump issued a sweeping call to begin rebuilding the nation's infrastructure, creating new jobs, overhauling the nation's healthcare system, and significantly boosting military spending. He told lawmakers the time for small thinking is over, and he called for the country to get behind his administration, which he says is set to get the United States back on track economically and socially.
I am asking all citizens to embrace this renewal of the American spirit. I am asking all members of Congress to join me in dreaming big and bold and daring things for our country. I am asking everyone watching tonight to seize this moment, believe in yourselves, believe in your future, and believe once more in America.
And Mr Trump's address came at a pivotal moment for his presidency, which has been mired in minor scandals since his inauguration in January. Michael Waipauri has been found guilty of murdering and kidnapping his longtime friend Lance Murphy. Mr Murphy's body was found at a rural property in Wellsford, north of Auckland, in 2015. Another man, Steve Gunby, was charged with kidnapping and being an accessory, but he was found not guilty. Jury members took 2 hours to make their unanimous decision. Waipauri, who is also known as Michael Davies, will be sentenced at the High Court in Auckland in April. The woman who was showered in petrol because of a broken pump at a Z Energy station says the company has lost her trust and she isn't likely to fill her car up there again. Ingrid Carson was covered in petrol when she went to fill up her jerry can at the Z Energy on Kapiti Road in Paraparaumu because of a split in the pump. The company is investigating why its staff didn't immediately call the fire service and how the pump broke. Mrs Carson says she now feels uncomfortable buying petrol from Z Energy because of the risk the company put her in.
Shock had definitely set in and I wasn't thinking right and I was definitely a bit shaky and my blood pressure was up, and I think it just sort of like reality hit in. It was like, oh, this could have been really bad.
Ingrid Carson says she has received flowers, a fuel voucher and compensation from the company for the stress and loss of clothing. It's 6:05. New Zealand need 280 to win the 4th one-day cricket international against South Africa in Hamilton and keep the series alive. Batting first after winning the toss, South Africa posted 279 for 8, with AB de Villiers top scoring with 72 not out. Off-spinner Jitan Patel was the most successful of the back-cap bowlers, taking 2 for 57. South Africa lead the 5-match series 2-1. Tributes are flowing for former silver fern Tanya Dalton, who will be remembered as both cheeky and unconventional, says former teammate Irene van Dijk. Dalton died this morning after collapsing while playing touch rugby last week. Van Dijk, who played both with and against her at international and provincial level, says Dalton was a fierce competitor who never gave up, but she could also be very unconventional.
She was like a sneaky cat. You know, you think you've pinned her down and then she comes up, skidding on the baseline or stepping in, taking another shot. So she was definitely a crafty player that if things didn't happen, she would make them happen.
A memorial service for Tanya Dalton will be held at North Harbour Stadium on Monday. The Chiefs and All Blacks first 5 Aaron Cruden will play his 100th Super Rugby game when his side plays the Blues in Hamilton on Friday night. He'll join French club Montpellier at the end of the Super Rugby season. And the Westport lawyer Jane Duncan has become the first female chair of a provincial union, having been appointed head of the Buller Rugby Union Board. And that's the news.
Over the border. In minutes, skin can freeze and fingers are freezing and they're having to be amputated in some cases. People don't make those decisions lightly. In the hole.
Totally textbook. Yeah, it was just a matter of getting a couple of ropes down the hole and getting the doctor down the hole and then 20 people hauled it back to the surface.
On the job.
To look at the number of people looking for jobs and saying they're all useless, they're all drug-addled, is just simply disgraceful.
Start your working day with Morning Report. Guy Espiner and Susie Ferguson, weekdays from 6.
Then on 9 to noon, British teacher, principal and agent for educational change, Sir John Jones. And after 10, global tribes and human cities. Author Joel Kotkin on the problem with making megacities the future for humanity. Join me, Catherine Ryan, on 9 to noon after Morning Report on RNZ National.
Another short forecast from Met Service for Northland, fine with isolated showers. For Auckland to Waitomo, including Coromandel Peninsula, Bay of Plenty and the Central High Country, fine spells and scattered showers today with possible thunderstorms south of Manukau Harbour. Gisborne and Hawke's Bay, fine with isolated showers this evening. Taranaki to Wellington, also Wairarapa, mainly fine weather. Marlborough, Nelson, Buller and Westland, mainly fine with some cloud this evening. Canterbury, low cloud with isolated drizzle tonight. Otago, Southland and Fiordland, areas of cloud, a few showers about Fiordland and coastal Southland. And for the Chatham Islands, fine spells today. It's 8 minutes past 6. You're listening to Checkpoint with John Campbell.
Thank you very much, Anna. Consummate professionalism, because I was furiously scribbling notes beside you as you were finishing there. Thanks, Anna Thomas. Yes, so the latest from these fires in North Canterbury. There are 3 fires burning. They are burning over an area, or have been burning over an area of about 60 hectares. There are 14 appliances fighting them. And how many helicopters? I think the latest is that there are still 7 helicopters working very hard. We're going to cross live to our reporter, Maya Barry, who's at the scene. Maya, thank you for being with us. What's happening there now?
So John, I'm still at this cordon just past Colburn. You'll be able to see behind me if you're watching that there's quite a significant queue of freight trucks and cars, and these are all vehicles that have not been allowed to pass beyond this cordon, and this cordon is, obviously the road is closed, it's State Highway 7 between Springs Junction and Colburn. Residents are the only people that are being allowed limited access beyond this cordon. We have been told by the fire service that they were hoping to provide a bit of an update about whether there might be a bit of a relaxing around these cordons at 6:30, so hopefully we'll have some updated information soon, but at the moment just a bit of a long wait for these truck drivers and people who were hoping to make it a bit further up north today.
Yeah, this is an important road too, isn't it? Because that's the road between Christchurch and Picton now, right?
That's right, this is the alternative highway to State Highway 1. As we know, the Kaikoura earthquake had a very significant impact on State Highway 1 and it's been closed since November. So this is really a lifeline for the South Island, and so you can just tell by how many cars are queued up behind me what an impact its closure is having.
Maya Barry, thank you, live from that cordon. Coming up, we're going to have more on Tanya Dalton and also more on the Labor deputy leadership. But we were speaking to people in the cordon and we came across a bit of a delight. Daryl Judge was on his way from Christchurch to Hamner as the scrub fires broke out. The Australian firefighter is here with around 80 other Australian people for a wedding. And you'll find out why they had to come to New Zealand for a wedding shortly. He was about 20 minutes north of Kelvedon when he was stopped at one of those cordons. He described to me what he could see.
It's over the mountain to the left of us. And the traffic in front of us, we've got about 2 kilometres of traffic in this bank of traffic where we've been pulled up to the side of the road. There's a roadblock behind us that police have just put up, which is hats in the middle of the road, and they've completely blocked the road and turned the traffic around now. There are some people that they've pulled over to the side of the road that they may let through to Hamner Springs, they're not sure. Short time ago, around about 5 or 10 minutes ago, we had a police car go up fast past us, and I was talking to one of the police, and he said something about the wind had changed up there. So I'm not completely sure if that's the case or not.
Which way were you heading? Were you heading north or south, Daryl?
We're heading north. We're heading from Christchurch to Hamner Springs.
And so basically all traffic is stopped there, and you can actually see the smoke over the hill, can you?
That's correct. We can see the plumes of smoke coming up, and sometimes the smoke comes up that thick that it forms a cloud over the top of the smoke, and which is usually, I think, from memory, being a firefighter back in Sydney, it's cold air above, and the smoke is just forming a cloud. But the smoke itself is sort of going in a northeasterly direction away from the fire, but I don't know how far it is away from us, but it doesn't seem all that far.
So you're a firefighter in Sydney, so do you reckon the flames are moving fast? I can hear a bit of gusty wind on your phone. Are they being fanned along?
It's not all that windy here. We've hardly got any wind here at all. It was around about 28 degrees, I think, before we pulled over.
Yeah.
So, but it's up higher there. It's sort of in the mountains on the pass. I can't remember the name of the pass, but it's on that actual pass up there.
Lewis Pass.
Lewis Pass, up past the Hamner Springs turn-off. So we're seeing big plumes of smoke coming up now over the mountain there towards it, but it's sort of, I guess, to the northwest of us.
And what are you doing? Are you in a rental car? Are you in New Zealand on holiday? Why are you here, Daryl?
That's correct. We're here for a wedding. Two of our best friends from Sydney are getting married over here tomorrow. And we've got to go up to Hamner Springs to the reception and the wedding up there. So we flew in on Tuesday and we spent the night in Christchurch, discovering Christchurch, and now we're going up for the wedding to stay up there. But depending whether we can get through, because there's no other way around.
No, that's it. That's it at the moment, isn't it? That's the only way in.
Yeah, that's it. So I guess welcome to New Zealand.
Yeah, we're really sorry. And so your friends are Aussies, are they? Your friends are, so this is an Aussie wedding taking place in New Zealand?
That's correct. Yeah, it's a same-sex marriage.
And so how many people have come over from Australia?
Oh.
There's 4 of us in this car and
there's about 80 of us.
How lovely, because this is because New Zealand is enlightened in the way Australia isn't. So same-sex couples can get married in New Zealand, right?
Exactly right. Australia's back in the past, and you know Australia's just with their stupid rules and laws, and they won't change them. So this has got to be done here.
Well,
when they step foot back on Australian soil, that doesn't mean a thing, the bit of paper, but you know, come on Australia, get with it.
Come on Australia. Two men or 2 women?
2 men.
Well, please wish them a very happy wedding from us. Have you got a cake? Have you got a cake?
Yep. Well, the funny thing is, about 2 kilometres ahead is the 2 grooms, and they've got the wedding cake in the back, which they've just picked up.
Oh no! So they're stuck in the same traffic jam, are they?
Same traffic, and I've got other people from the wedding party stuck in the traffic as well.
Daryl Judge, we really do hope they get to the chapel on time. We will check back with Daryl and make sure that the cake, the grooms and the wedding party all made it through. Labor MPs will elect a new deputy leader next week after veteran MP Annette King, first elected to Parliament for Labor in 1984, announced she'll step down as deputy and retire from Parliament at the election in September. The newly minted Mount Albert MP, Jacinda Ardern, is the clear front-runner to replace her, given that she's got the backing of the party's leader, Andrew Little, and of Annette King herself. The announcement came just 48 hours after both Mr Little and his deputy really strenuously denied speculation that Jacinda Ardern's by-election win would result in her elevation to the number 2 job. But Ms King insists her decision to leave was hers and hers alone. Here is our political editor, Jane Patterson.
Speculation has swirled since Jacinda Ardern's win in Mount Albert at the weekend that she was poised to replace Annette King as deputy leader. Ms King refused to be interviewed on Monday, saying it was a distraction and her plans hadn't changed. Today, the MP, whose political career has spanned more than 30 years, says she's been considering her position for some time, and after discussing the matter with her colleagues now feels it's the right time to pass on the baton. Ms King says she's come under no pressure from Mr Little or the Labour Party caucus to stand aside.
No, not from a single member of caucus, and certainly not from the leader of the Labour Party, Andrew Little. This is totally my decision.
Annette King says she retained the full backing of the caucus as deputy until she made her announcement to stand down. She says she detected no shift in support towards Ms Ardern.
I absolutely have had no feeling of that at all. In fact, I've had nothing but support from my colleagues, including Jacinda and Andrew. So no, there's none of that. This is purely my decision, and you know, people will believe it or not, but it is true.
The leader, Andrew Little, has paid tribute to Ms King as a loyal and hard-working deputy, and backs her statement she came under no pressure to stand aside.
The decision that Annette has taken is entirely her decision. She's told me about it yesterday. She's made that decision.
He'll be nominating Jacinda Ardern for deputy after her resounding win in Mount Albert, and because the 36-year-old MP is part of the fresh face of the Labour Party lineup.
It is a decision of caucus. There has to be a vote, but I'm backing Jacinda. Jacinda, in her nearly 9 years in Parliament, has done tremendous work on a number of fronts. She's a fantastic networker. She connects with a part of the electorate who, you know, we're working very hard to connect with.
Jacinda Ardern, who was elected to Parliament in 2008 as a list MP, says while she has not actively sought a leadership role in the past, she'd be happy to accept the position of deputy.
I've always said it's not a job I would ask for, but if I was asked, and if the party and my team thought I was well placed to do the job, then I would happily take on the role.
The Prime Minister, Bill English, says he's not fazed by the change in line-up, but the Labour Party will miss Annette King.
Annette's been a long time, reasonable, stabilising influence in the Labour Party, I think more broadly respected across the Parliament. So it'll be a bit of a challenge for the Labour Party, I think, but we certainly wish Annette well.
As to whether Jacinda Ardern could face any competition for the number 2 job, Andrew Little says he's not aware of any other MPs who want to put their name forward for deputy. From Parliament for Checkpoint, Jane Patterson.
19 minutes past 6. The sporting community, and in fact the broader New Zealand community, is mourning the loss of former Silver Fern Tanya Dalton, who died this morning after collapsing last week while playing touch rugby. She was 45. She suffered a ruptured aneurysm and had been on life support since Thursday, but that was switched off yesterday afternoon. Sports editor Stephen Hewson looks back on her career.
There it is! That's it! They have done it! 16 years and the drought is over!
Tanya Dalton was a member of the New Zealand side which won the 2003 Netball World Champs in Jamaica, 16 years after New Zealand's previous success in 1987. She played 37 tests for the Silver Ferns in an international career which spanned 11 years between 1996 and 2011. The former Silver Fern, Irene van Dijk, played both with and against her at international and provincial level. Van Dijk says Dalton was a fierce competitor who never gave up, but she could also be very unconventional.
She was like a sneaky cat. You know, you think you've pinned her down and then she comes up, skidding on the baseline or stepping in, taking another shot. So she was definitely a crafty player that if things didn't happen, she would make them happen.
Off the court, Van Dijk says Dalton was the life and soul of a party.
When you say Tanya Dalton, the thing that jumps to mind is teabag dancing on the tables to Sweet Caroline and singing at the top of her lungs.
Where did the nickname Teabag come from?
She loved drinking tea, and I think it just stuck. Everyone just calls her Teabag. So, yes, it's always, are you ready for a cup of tea? And as soon as you get into a room, if you're rooming with her, the first thing she will make is a cup of tea. So, yes, she was definitely a tea girl.
The chief executive of Netball New Zealand, Jenny Wiley, says they learnt Dalton had collapsed during the national body's AGM in Queenstown last week.
She was one of those people that was vibrant and a little bit cheeky and lived life to the full. And so she obviously had her time as a player, and I'm sure there'll be lots of commentary on what she did on the court. Equally, she was a mum and an ambassador for women within the sport. So, yeah, equally as important as what she delivered on court.
Jenny Wiley says many in the netball fraternity got to say goodbye to Dalton over the past few days, which will help in the grieving process.
Tanya's one of those people that always gave to others, and the fact that she was able to put up a fight for, a number of days and let her closest friends and family have that time with her, I think was a testament to someone that, will always be remembered for what she gave back.
Tanya Dalton is survived by her husband Dwayne and 3 children. A memorial service will be held at North Harbour Stadium on Monday. For Checkpoint, Stephen Hewson.
Been speaking to lots of people about Tanya Dalton. We spoke to Yvonne Willering earlier, and she said to us she really was that fantastic. It's 22 minutes past 6. The union representing workers at the Cadbury factory in Dunedin has launched a public petition opposing its planned closure. Cadbury's owner, Mondelez International, announced this month its proposal to close the factory next year, which could, of course, affect the 360 jobs there. The online petition launched by Air2 urges people to tell Mondelez's Director of Manufacturing for Australia and New Zealand that leaving Dunedin is a deal breaker for consumers. In other words, if you don't make the chocolate here, we're not going to eat your chocolate here. The union met with Cadbury staff this afternoon. Cadbury union representative Dave Dunn told our reporter Lydia Anderson about the feedback from staff.
They're concerned about sort of redundancies. They're concerned about just what the process is and understanding what the whole consultation process is. So just explaining to them that, yeah, it is a process that we're undergoing. We're going to do our very best to try and change the Mondelez mind and, put forward a good case. So, yeah, that's what they're interested in knowing.
Is there a united view among workers at this point that they want to fight the closure, or what are the various viewpoints that they've had?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think people are still just shocked, and the process is only just beginning. So I think people are just waiting to hear, get a bit of feedback, and then be able to start making decisions then about what their thoughts are. So I think it's a bit of a mixed at the moment.
That was Cabinet Union Rep Dave Dunn talking to Lydia Anderson. They are starting a petition opposing the planned closure of the factory. Let's go back to some sport now. It's been 8 years since the Warriors have won their first game of the season. Gosh, that's a long old time between drinks, isn't it? But halfback Shaun Johnson is hoping to break the drought when his team fronts up against the Newcastle Knights in their opening match this weekend. Johnson told our sports reporter Matt Chatterton the Warriors hadn't begun a campaign at Mount Smart Stadium since then either. Gosh, he hopes a home ground advantage along with new coach Steve Kearney could prove a winning combination.
Yeah, his look's been really good. He's obviously brought a fresh, outlook on, the way to play the game and what holds up in, big situations. So, I think he's doing a terrific job so far. Obviously, whatever's happened so far doesn't mean too much unless we go out there, this week and perform. So, that's what we're looking to do. We're looking to get better from our last trial game, and I'm sure if we do that, then we'll be okay.
Newcastle this week, what are you sort of expecting from them first round up? I mean, should fans expect from the Warriors this first game? Obviously for us, we've just been focusing on ourselves. So, Newcastle, they're going to do their thing, but for us, we want to control what we do. I think, people can expect a pretty, obviously a good game of footy. We want to play some footy, but we also want to, really grind out a game and just be in the game for 80 minutes. So, we're looking forward to doing that. Finally, simple question, what's this year about for the Warriors? What is 2017 for the Warriors?
I think a big one is probably changing perception, through our performances. We just want to walk off the field knowing we've done, ourselves and our families proud, and that in turn probably means we've done the members proud as well. So, we want to be a club that everyone's proud of, and we've had a few tough years, but, bro, we're working hard. That's not going to change, so that's all we can do, and looking forward to getting into it.
Matt Chatterton was the reporter there. 26 minutes past 6 is the time on Checkpoint. Lots of talk of cordons and traffic not getting through around the fire areas just near Hamner Springs. Of course, this is now the main route from Christchurch to Picton. We're going to go back to our mate Daryl, our wonderful Australian friend who joined us earlier in the program. He's here for the wedding of two chaps who can get married in New Zealand but can't get married in Australia. Daryl, are you there?
Yes, I'm here. How are you?
Yeah, good. You good? Are you still stuck at that cordon? I've just heard from Pip, my boss, that you're through it. Are you?
Yeah, we're through it. We're sitting at the local pub in Hamner Springs having a beer, as Aussies do.
I'm delighted to hear it. And did the grooms make it with the cake?
The grooms made it with the cake and the flowers. They had the flowers and the cake had to go into the cool room down at Red Post Cafe. So we thank them for looking after us. They actually put it into their cool rooms down there and, kept them cool for them. So, but they made it back up here to Hamner Springs and, everyth's set now for the wedding tomorrow.
Okay, fantastic. Some confusion about this because we've been told, of course, that road is closed, but clearly you all made it through.
Through to Hamner Springs is closed, but at the intersection of that, the Lewis Pass, is it? That goes up over the top. That's closed there, but you can get through to Hamner Springs. But when we come through, we could see the water bombers up there, and they were bombing the fire. The fire nearly looked like it was actually out when we got through, so they did a pretty good job of it.
Yeah, they did an amazing job of it. You're saying this not only as a kind Australian visiting New Zealand, but actually as a firefighter yourself, so that they really worked hard. There was a lot of monsoon buckets, a lot of helicopters working, weren't there?
Yeah, there was. We saw counted at least, I think someone said about 7. There was quite a few up there because we spent around about probably an hour down at Culverton, and the fire was already out by the time we hit the road and got up there. So, they got it out pretty quick.
Yeah, wonderful. Hey, Daryl, the grooms aren't anywhere near you, are they? They're not there, are they?
No, the groom's not here. No, they're not here. They're back at the motel.
Otherwise, I'll get them on the radio for you.
Yeah, which would be lovely. This is an amazing thing. I mean, we've been told that Australians and people from all around the world are coming to New Zealand because we have what the shorthand is gay marriage, is marriage equality, isn't it? But there's 80 of you have come for this wedding. 80 Australians have come for it. This is big business.
80 Australians have come over for the wedding, because our archaic government back home in Australia, our federal government will not pass the laws for him to do it. So, as I said to you before, get on board with the rest of the world, Australia, Shouldn't have to travel the world and go around and do it. You should be able to have it on your home soil. But then again, we wouldn't have experienced the beautiful country that's up here in New Zealand and the scenery and that goes with it. So, they've done us a favour in one way.
You're a bit of a charmer, you are, Daryl. You're a bit of a... So they'll be husband in New Zealand, but when they go home, that's not recognised in Australia, is it? They will not be regarded in Australia as married.
That's right, because Australian law do not allow it. That's correct.
Yeah. Well, we hope... what time is the wedding tomorrow?
The wedding is at 4 p.m.
Yep. Will you send us
the wedding starts at 4.
Will you send us a picture of the boys?
Oh God, if I turn up at 4, I'll be an hour late.
It's at 3 o'clock. Okay. Excellent.
I'll turn up at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
I'll just follow them.
Okay. Will you send us a picture of them as they stand there? We'd love that.
Yes, I will, mate. And we'll be still. Are you on the air tomorrow night?
Yeah, we are. Yeah, we're on air every night.
Call us in because we'll be still at the reception then when you're on the air.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks, Daryl.
Call us back and we'll hook you up with the grooms and you can have a quick.
Okay. Lovely. What a very fine Australian visitor Daryl Judge is, bringing our show to an end tonight. Thank you for being with us. We'll be back tomorrow at 5.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. The fire service says no homes are in danger from a large scrub fire near Hanmer Springs, which has closed State Highway 7, the alternative road to Christchurch. Corrections sacked a staff member for assaulting a severely at-risk inmate while he was tied down to a bed. Labour MP Jacinda Ardern says while she's never actively sought the deputy leadership, she would be happy to do the job after Annette King announced she's stepping down. And President Donald Trump has promised a renewal of American spirit in a speech to Congress. Our next news and weather is at 7.
This week on Inside Out, we celebrate 100 years of jazz recordings by taking a trip through the entirety of jazz history.